He's about 455 yards away. He's going to hit about a 2-iron, I think.
This is the School of Motion podcast. Come for the MoGraph, stay for the puns.
If you want to up your game, I highly advise that you sign up for a job that you're not qualified for and see if you can get it. If it doesn't scare you, if it doesn't like make you feel like you're going to fail, then you're not going to grow. I mean, you can be the biggest fish in the pond, but put yourself around people that are better than you and watch what happens. I mean, obviously you're going to have anxiety going through the roof. I mean, there's going to be nights to where you're going to be questioning your motives and stuff. But at the end, though, it's going to make you a much better artist. I promise you that.
It's an awesome time to be learning motion design. There are so many resources out there now that didn't exist even 5-6 years ago. I love seeing new faces pop up in the tutorial scene, I guess, if there is such a thing. And my guest today is one to watch. Sergei Prokhnevskiy is one half of Ukramedia, a site that is growing very quickly and has gained a loyal following by creating great After Effects tutorials, a podcast, an online community, and coming soon, a course on After Effects expressions. He and his twin brother Vladimir went all in with the site a few months ago, leaving behind a steady paycheck and devoting themselves full-time to their business. That sounds pretty scary, right? Well, that's actually not as scary as coming over to the United States as a refugee when you're 12 and don't speak any English. And the brothers did that too. In this episode, we dive into a crazy story of how two Ukrainian brothers found themselves living in Tennessee, of all places, playing around with Photoshop on a friend's computer, and eventually running a website devoted to teaching motion graphics. It's a really inspiring story, and I also think that Sergei has a ton of wisdom to share when it comes to facing scary situations. I think you'll get a lot out of this one, and I think you're gonna like Sergei. So let's get to it. Sergei, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. You have a really interesting story, and let me just try to pronounce this. Dobro požalovit.
Nailed it.
I do.
I love it, man.
Perfect. That's my one Russian word that I know.
Hey, that's all you need to know, man. That's all you need to know.
Exactly. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me on, man. I've been a fan of what you guys do, so this is definitely a great honor to be on, man.
So let's go back in time because, you know, when I was kind of doing my research on you and you have a twin brother, Vladimir, who I got to meet on your podcast recently. But he mentioned you guys were refugees when you came over to America. And so I'd love to hear that story. Like where did you come from? Who came with you? How did that go down?
Yeah, we moved to the States when we were about 12 years old in 2000. So you can only imagine, you know, the world that, you know, we came from Kiev, Ukraine. So we were used to a whole different culture, a whole different mentality. I'm not even talking about the culture, just the way people thought. It was a lot different. And yeah, we weren't exposed to a lot of technology. We had like a little small black and white TV that we watched soccer on, and that was about it. So now we're coming to a new world. In 2000, we were 12. You know, we don't know the language, we don't know the culture. And dude, we had these two churches that sponsored us. Not only I'm talking about complete strangers, we never met them. They completely showered us with all kinds of gifts, all kinds of they found us a place to stay, like a house that they rented out. I mean, just so much love they put. Like every day we had someone come by and take us somewhere. Like they signed us up for soccer. They took us to tournaments. They paid for everything, like Boy Scouts and all that stuff. We just completely were amazed by the American love that we always heard about, but we literally experienced it throughout all that stuff. And really, honestly, that's where my love for people comes from. I just saw how much people poured in me, and I'm like, hey man, I want to do the same. I had so many mentors growing up, so many people pouring so much life into me and my twin brother. And we had this one guy, and I know I'm kind of I just want to, there's so much more to that, but we had one guy who was with Scouts with us, and he gave us this computer. It was keep in mind, Joey, we've never seen a computer in our lives. Right. It's like the first time.
What is this thing?
Yeah, we were like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. And, obviously it wasn't anything great, but it had some stuff installed like Premiere, Photoshop, Illustrator, Macromedia, Flash. Do you remember that one?
Oh, hell yeah.
Rest in peace. And there were a few others, but we dove in. We don't know the language. We don't have any friends. Obviously, we just moved here, so we don't know how to talk to people. We're very kind of new to the environment. So all we had that computer, And we just started pushing on buttons. I mean, we didn't speak the language. I didn't know what Canvas was. I didn't know what copy, paste, all of that. I didn't know anything. So we're just pushing buttons like, oh, wow, this does this, or that does that. And so naturally, I feel like I learned the tools, my brother as well, like from a different perspective, not from how it's supposed to be, because we didn't know limits. We didn't know where the box ended. You know, we're kind of like, all right, yeah, I didn't know this was hard. Let's try it. And so, and internet at the time, that was like 2000, 2001. You know, and we couldn't just go and watch tutorials because it was dial up, and I couldn't read blogs. I mean, I couldn't do that because I didn't speak the language. So it was a lot of figuring stuff out. I couldn't read manuals. So that was my journey. I just started creating stuff, and keep in mind, we don't speak the language. And at this point, we're creating stuff, and people that we go to school, our peers, our sponsors, they're seeing our work and they're like, wow, this is impressive. So in a weird way, it became like a voice for us, right? Now, all of a sudden, we have some kind of value. And in a weird way, it just gave us this awesome satisfaction that till this day, I absolutely enjoy.
What a crazy story. All right, well, let's go back a little bit. So you said that, you know, the mentality in Kiev, where you came from, was totally different than where you ended up. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what do you mean by that?
First, I don't want to like offend any Ukrainians or Slavic people. I mean, they're awesome people, but American mentality and like Slavic mentality is different in a lot of ways because, you know, it's a lot more harsh, more like tough love type deal. I mean, maybe not anymore. Obviously, internet changed a lot of things these days. But at the time, it was like that. You know, keep in mind, Russia went through wars. It's a nation without grandfathers, like a lot of. So mothers raised a lot of people. So there was a lot of like harsh love, a lot of that coming from a culture. So, but when and a lot of like, don't do this, you know, just stick to the job. And it was a lot of like limiting, kind of don't dream as much kind of thing. And then when it came to the States, it's like, you can be anything you want, you know, go after this, go after that, try this. And that was impressive to me. Like people all of a sudden like have value, like they see you differently. Like, yeah, you can be anything you want. Like whatever sure, go for it. And I know it seems like not a lot to you guys because you're used to growing in that mentality. You know, that's how you grew up. But for us, it was different. We're like, wow, all these opportunities. We can, you know, we didn't have that many opportunities. For us, it was just survival mode. All right, how can we survive another day? But this is like a whole different perspective on life.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I certainly took that for granted most of my life. You know, just the idea that, you know, work hard, take some risks, and you too can, you know, have your own company and whatever, and achieve your dreams. And it's beaten into your head, like, you know, and that's a good thing, I think. And so I can't imagine growing up, you know, in an environment where it's the opposite and you're basically told, don't do that. And looking at what you and your brother are doing now, with Ukramedia, which we're going to dig into in a little bit. You know, you two are entrepreneurs, and it's not a uniquely American thing, but it's like there's a very strong element of that ethos, I think, baked into this country, that idea that, you know what, quit your job, start a company, and you can do anything, right?
For sure, especially that immigrant mentality, kind of like, hey, I showed up to this country with a suitcase in my hand, and, you know, I started with nothing. So if I lose, I mean, how bad can you get, right? It's that kind of mentality. Like at this point, let's try. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable about this, but let's jump off this cliff and let's hope there's water. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, like can't get any worse, right? So
how bad can you get? Yeah, I mean, but I think for me, what was so important is I think people forget this part, is that when you jump, when you do a lot of crazy, uncomfortable things that make you grow, what's important is the support that you have. And I think that's what American people are super awesome at. They're always there. Like I know my wife, obviously my brother, my family, like we all like so supportive of each other. Like in a way, it's kind of like, hey, go after these dreams because if you fail, I got you. So it's that kind of mentality, you know, like, yeah. So I think that's encouraging. And man, and when we first moved, we moved to the South. So it was the like Tri-Cities area. I don't know if you ever heard, it's like Tennessee, Bristol, Johnson City area. That's where we grew up mostly. Okay. And I don't know, a lot of people always ask me, it's like, how did you end up there? A lot of immigrants go to bigger cities like Chicago, New York. We just ended up there because my dad had a sister that lived there. And we just somehow ended up there, which I'm so thankful because I have like a huge love for Southern people, man. They're so awesome, man. Like the way they do life in general is just so encouraging. And I'm so glad that I was able to get that kind of influence in my life. So.
Well, as a Texan, I fully support that idea.
That's good.
So why did your family have to leave the Ukraine? Was it like a choice? Like, you know what, it's just not so great here, let's get out of here? Or, I mean, were you in danger? What was the reason?
We created this recently, like a video for our YouTube channel. We kind of included our story because, I mean, that's kind of like the beginning of our story. I mean, that's beginning of our story, but it's obviously like a mid-story for our parents. So we always include that. And a lot of people would, like, especially Ukrainians, they would comment, be like, what was so bad about Ukraine that you fled as refugee? And that's a good question because when we left, it wasn't that bad anymore. So you have to kind of know a little history. In 1991, Soviet Union collapsed, right? And then everything became chaotic, and then it kind of, became more normal. So by the time we got here, it was more normal, more stable. But my parents were, I mean, they're Christians, so they were persecuted Christians at a time before, the collapse of the Soviet Union. They were Christians. And because of that, they were persecuted for their faith. They were encouraged. They were preaching ideas that kind of freeing and don't follow the system. And, so obviously the government naturally would suppress that. And so they were persecuted a lot. They were put in jail and all kinds of stuff. And obviously the family there's altogether 9 of us. So I have 6 brothers and 2 sisters.
Whoa.
So yeah, it's a big family. We grew up, kind of poor and bad. And obviously because everything came from the state, communist country, so if you don't go along, they kind of cut you and make it very painful for you to survive, kind of thing. So my parents obviously went against that. They were Christians, so they were persecuted. And, we had an opportunity to leave the country in the 80s. The US government gave us papers saying, hey, if you want to escape this, go ahead and go. And my dad was like, no, man, I'm staying here. I'm fighting. And so we had that opportunity at the time. So, but my dad obviously didn't go for it. It wasn't until years later, around mid-90s, after the collapse, it was even worse for us. We started sharing toothbrushes and shoes. I mean, it was pretty bad. And then my brother had his sister here in the States, and then she invited us to come in through the refugee status because, just to prove that we have gone through that before. So technically we weren't fleeing because it kind of collapsed already, but we used that opportunity because we didn't do it then, and to kind of escape it anyway, because in a weird way, it did affect us because it affected our future, how we were living before then. After the collapse, everyone were okay, but not us because we didn't have a lot of income because of the persecution. So we were still affected by it, but we didn't directly flee the country because of it. It was the effects of it. So that's how I would have to explain it. I know it's a little complicated, but yeah, we still had that status though.
Gotcha. Okay. So it was more, I mean, it's amazing. You said something that was kind of crazy to me. You said, your parents were openly Christian and I'm guessing they were proselytizing or something. And you said so of course the government cracks down on that. And it's obviously not how it works here. We have freedom of religion and all that kind of stuff. And so, that's a crazy story, man. And I'm guessing that experience, has probably prepared you for, the life of, a motion designer in terms of breaking into the industry and having to take your licks and then being an entrepreneur. Those things must seem a lot less scary,
Yeah. I mean, I remember in Ukraine, we would have secret meetings, as a Christian, they would gather in secret meetings. Obviously they want to get busted, but then they would bust people and release dogs on kids and stuff. I mean, I've seen, there was a lot of that. So yeah, when you come to America and you have these opportunities thrown at you, I agree with you, Joey. It's not as scary as it might seem. What's the worst that can happen? A client might say, "This is not what I wanted." Oh wow, give me my. I agree with you. Definitely, it has a whole different perspective on life.
So you finally get to the States and I'm assuming right away you have to learn English, which at 12 is probably. It's a pain in the ass, I'm guessing. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I had to practice saying "Dobro požalovit" just to be able to say it. And so I'm sure English is just as hard. And you said a friend gave you a computer with some software on it. So was After Effects on that computer or did that come later?
Honestly, I know it had a bunch of stuff. I can't remember. It was a lot of stuff that I had nothing to do with Adobe, but I think After Effects was a part of it. And he kind of he didn't even know how to use it himself. He was kind of I just have these things. He was a fan of video. He was a Boy Scout. He kind of did National Jamboree stuff. And honestly, he kind of he saw that we had interest in that, and he even plugged me in. Like, we were working at the Boy Scout camp, we were the camera people, and like I was slowly like, he was like tagging us into his passion. That was his passion. And by the way, the guy's name was Mike Wolf. He's just a great friend still till today. So, but anyway, he kind of helped us along the way, gave us opportunities to go and kind of try things. And I went to this like national Boy Scout Jamboree, where I think it was like OA. It's like a different section. But anyway, I was able to work with people that are in the industry doing a lot of cool stuff. So I got to expose, to that kind of environment, to see, they gave me some advice. So it was a good opportunity for me, but it started with that one computer with one guy just kind of showing his passion with me, sharing it with me,
That's really cool. And I love how you said earlier that, when you still weren't very comfortable with English, you kind of used that outlet as your voice, because you can create, you can show people, and then they smile and they like what you did and they saw something there. So at what point did you think that, this was something you wanted to pursue further? Because you did end up going into an animation program. So how did you get from the 12-year-old with a laptop with some Adobe stuff on there to now I'm studying animation in college? Yeah,
keep in mind, we were still not aware of a lot of the culture that America had. For example, we were in high school and we're pretty decent soccer players. Me and Vlad both, we did really well, but we didn't know about scholarships. We didn't know any of that stuff until it was too late. My senior year, we're like, hey, did you guys know you can get scholarship for soccer? I'm like, what? All of a sudden, like, coaches would contact us and they're like, my GPA was not, it was terrible. It was like, basically, if I had to describe it, the reason why I passed classes because I was a pretty good soccer player, and it was a small school, and teachers were like, "Hey, we need him. Come on, let's pass him." So I was that guy, and so school education just was not my strongest. Keep in mind, I was, especially in Tennessee, they were not used to immigrants coming to that area, and they would put me in the same class, like English class, as the American guy. And they would expect me to get the exact same result. And here I am, like, dude, like, I barely speak English. I remember one guy was cheating off of my paper. And I remember thinking, like, dude, you're in big trouble. It's like, do you understand what you're getting yourself into? Yeah. So it was a lot of that. And not only that, I remember a guidance counselor, we had to sit down, it's like, hey, so we got to graduate. We have to somehow make you guys graduate. And so let's look over all your credits and stuff. It's like, oh, you guys need to take second language. I'm like, wouldn't English be my second language? Yeah. No. We can't. I was like, what about Russian? I speak Russian. Can we do that? And they're like, no, we don't offer that. You have to take something else. They literally forced me to take another language, and I was taking Latin. So here I am, barely speaking English, trying to learn Latin. Oh man, it was a comedy show.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. So is that how you sort of ended up at East Tennessee State? You were sort of like, well, I guess I'm going to college. I better pick something. This sounds good.
Well, it came later. I was dating my wife at the moment, or my girlfriend who became my wife. And I heard her once say, like, hey, I'm not going to marry a guy who didn't go to college. So I'm like, ooh, I got to figure this out. Like, what does that mean? Pressure. And plus, here I am, an immigrant dating somebody else's daughter. So I was like, I want to up my, my value a little bit. I'm like, all right, I better like do something with my life. So sure. I thought it was a good idea to go and get this thing called education. I hear it's really, really great. So I signed up, and I realized that I was pretty terrible. I went to like community schools for two years and took like a semester in just developmental classes, which is, for those of you that are listening, you don't know what that is. It's basically classes that you would take before you can actually take like a college credit class. So I'm sitting there trying to like learn all this stuff. Literally, I'm struggling with like basic math, basic English, basic whatever. I'm like struggling at it. And I went from that in 4 years taking calculus and like doing really well in that. So it was 4 years of like, man, I got to figure this stuff out. Like I got to learn. So it was a lot of like methods that I figured out along the way. It was also for me, Joey, like I always pictured myself as stupid, dumb. This is not for me. I'm not good enough for that. So in the education realm, so it was like soccer came natural to me, graphics came natural to me, but education was not something good for me. I mean, it started like when I was a kid. I remember a teacher would just say like, oh, you Prokhnevskiy's just not very good. You'll be lucky if one day you end up in America, which we did. I mean, thank you for prophesying, lady. But so that was the kind of influence that I had, that mentality, right? The Soviet mentality, like, oh, you guys are just not very well. So I naturally, growing up, kind of put that cap on myself, like, hey, I'm not good at this. But those 4 years kind of helped me to get out of that. And it gave me confidence, one class at a time. It was like a step. And next thing you know, I'm there, So, and eventually I arrived. I was able to get the degree and learn a lot of stuff, a lot of information along the way.
Cool. So what did you learn once you got into your animation program? I mean, were you doing like sort of motion designy animation, or was it more like a traditional animation program, like character and traditional?
Yeah, I went to ETSU. It's like a state school, and it was known for character animation. A lot of people that worked there or that went through that program ended up doing like good stuff, like feature films, but they didn't have motion graphics stuff. And I knew early on that I wanted to do motion graphics. So I went through that program. I learned modeling in Maya and like all that stuff that I didn't really care for. I had to do like rigging in Maya and all that stuff. So it was kind of out of my element. But along the way, my professor allowed me to use Cinema 4D. So I was able to somehow, they indirectly like created like my own path for me through motion graphics. So they were very careful with that. So I wouldn't say that I picked up a lot along the way. Most of the learning came from the industry, but it was, they had some good foundational like stuff in me that kind of helped me to figure things out along the way. So it was a good start somewhere, right? But I don't think it was like, I can't say that I learned everything I know from that program, but it was great.
Well, you said that you knew right away that you wanted to do motion graphics. How did you know that? Like, did you see something? Were you on MoGraph.net? Like, how did you figure out that that's what you wanted to do?
I mean, I think all roads lead to Andrew Kramer for everybody.
Preach.
that guy just never ages. That's what I hear. Does he exist? Is he God? I want to meet him one day.
He's just as handsome in real life. I can attest.
What does he do? What does he eat for breakfast? But anyway, so that guy obviously influenced a lot of people. So that's how I realized like, hey, I really want to do this. And I did like weddings and filmed rodeos. I did like Fox Sports stuff. And one day I remember I was working for this small, I went to school and then I was pick up freelance gigs. I just fooled people, I'm like, they would come into me and tell me, hey, can you do this quick lower third for us? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Give it to me. Of course. And then I'm like, what the heck did I sign myself up for here? And like, I was figuring stuff out like that while other kids were playing video games in their dorms. I was commuting. Yeah. So I was doing a lot of freelance during the summer. I would do rodeo tour and I would create graphics for their for their video stuff. And it just kind of slowly merged into that. And I really like sports a lot. And somehow, after college, it's just like a natural fit. I'm like, hey, I don't care much for film and character animation. I mean, I get it. It's fun, but I like quick turnarounds, like a TV style things to where I can be, just have maybe me and somebody else working on stuff instead of like years of work and a lot of, variables involved. So to me, it was just a natural fit. I knew it kind of fit my personality. I kind of liked that kind of environment, that kind of work. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all that. So then how did you end up getting hired at Fox Sports? Because I think there was like a few years after you graduated where you were doing some other things, but it sounds like Fox Sports, because you're a soccer player. It sounds like a good fit. So how'd you end up there?
Well, I started at the very bottom, right? Small shop, then a bigger production company. And then I always wanted to do sports. I would apply at ESPN and they would like nicely tell me, hey, try again next time. So it just kind of, no, I don't want to diss ESPN, but I'm glad I ended up at Fox Sports. So eventually I just knocked a lot of times and said, hey, I love sports. I'm hungry for it. Put me in. I want to do this. And it's just, the regular step, you just apply for it. In fact, the way it happened, I just saw it pop up. I wasn't applying for jobs. I saw it pop up. I think it was motionographer or something like that. And literally they say, hey, submit your application in here and all that stuff. And I got tired of applying for jobs. So I literally just, whoever posted that article, I just sent them an email with my demo reel. I'm like, hey, interested, here's my demo reel. If you're interested, let me know. If not, it's been, it was good talking to you. And 2 months later, out of nowhere, they just emailed me and say, hey, we'd love to consider you. They flew me in. We tried it out and it was great. I'm so glad that I got the job. It was honestly, Joey, one of the best jobs I've ever had. I mean, the environment, the way they do things, it was totally different from what I was used to. And yeah, man, I'm so glad that I did it.
So what kind of stuff were you doing there?
You would be surprised. So it's in Charlotte, right? The main headquarters is in LA. But the Charlotte, they have a Charlotte office, and I didn't think they did a lot of stuff in Charlotte. They were just telling me that was during like the stage when it just transitioned into like FS1, Fox Sports 1, and all that stuff. So I didn't understand like all of that. So I thought it was just like just one part of the channel, like FS1. It's not FS2. But when I got there, I realized like, man, these guys like created graphics for the Super Bowl and all these graphics packages and all. I mean, we worked on like high level national stuff. I mean, it's created in Charlotte. And I was so excited about that. I mean, I worked on NFL. I mean, like college football, the baseball package. We literally would create graphics packages in Charlotte office. And then we would source it out for everybody to use. And they would like version them for teams and stuff like that for other local affiliates of Fox Sports. So yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised how much is actually done in Charlotte. I was amazed by it.
I'd love to know a little bit about the workflow for that, because I've done some stuff. I've actually done freelance work for Fox Sports, but it's always, it's like pre-rendered stuff that goes into, like a segment about a player or something like that. But I'm assuming that a lot of the work you were doing had to be then turned into live graphics that could go, on air, like during a football game or something. So how does that work?
Well, they have different levels of stuff. When you first get in, then obviously like they try you out. So there's a lot of, you're dealing with a producer, and then they give you a work order, and then you like update the players, kind of what you were talking about. But then there's like another stage to where they team people up, like 4 of you will be working on the MLB package. 4 of you will be working on NFL. And, they kind of team up. They go through stages. I mean, literally, you go from the very bottom, like research, you do the boards, you do everything, right? Everything still, present the whole package. We would go like through like 7, 8 revisions of different looks. And then we go into the animation stage. We'd go to compositing stage. I mean, there's a full-blown production, and it's growing. I think they're planning on expanding the Charlotte office even more. So it's just unbelievable how much they do there. And so I've done a lot of just creating. At first it was just small stuff, but then eventually we got into like creating heavy stuff. And I mean, it would be everything 3D from the ground up. Like you have input at every stage. And I love that. That was awesome.
That's really cool. And would your work ever end up, say, like, being used by some Viz RT artist, like live stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. Like I designed stuff that was in the open. I designed stuff where it was, I'll tell you one story. I remember I was creating like a lineup for MLB World Series. It's like I don't know much about baseball, but apparently it's a big deal. So the World Series.
Kind of.
Yeah. I remember like doing the lineup, and literally I was talking to a producer in a truck in New York. I think that was not this World Series, but the one before that. And they still use the same look, by the way, for World Series. So when the lineup, you have like 3 people come up and they swing their bats. And they have like a name at the bottom. So I designed that literally like an hour before it aired. So like we rendered it out. Like obviously we worked the whole day, and then we rendered it out an hour before it actually went live. So I put it through the system. The guy in the truck got it, got in the car, drove home, literally got through the door, turned on the TV, and like in 5 minutes, that graphic came on. I was like, oh my God, man, that's pretty cool.
That's crazy. That is really crazy. So were you involved, because a lot of that stuff, like those big sports packages, there's even sort of live footage elements that have to be incorporated into it. Yeah. So like, are you involved in that? And were you involved in that end too? Like, what, we want all of the players lit a certain way because it's going to go with like the graphics we're doing, or was that just kind of given to you?
No, we create graphics and stuff. I mean, they would use all of our graphics. We would design sets, design everything, and they would, obviously you mentioned Viz. They would do that in Viz, and they would create all that stuff. Basically, we create templates. If you can think of it that way, we would create templates that they can quickly place stuff in. Like footage, wipes. I mean, anything. So anything graphical we would create, and they would put live stuff in there. So they have a pretty good system, Joey. Like it's really. Like really detailed how they do things. It's unbelievable. It's like
I've never worked in-house at a place like that. I have a lot of friends actually who are editors that work in live sports, and they've told me just the pace of it, you can't even believe. Like coming from sort of the normal motion design world, doing a 30-second spot where you spend a month on it, versus, okay, we have, there's a commercial break on right now, and when we come back, I need that graphic, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's more like a in-truck kind of, yeah, I mean, you go through different stages. You'll experience a lot of it. It's never like the same, but I guess most of the work gets done in the project, in the main graphics package work. So once you figure everything out for stuff like that, where they need stuff on the fly, they literally have Viz people just type stuff and boom, it's done. So they already kind of figure things out when they create the package. So really, all that stuff on the fly is just a matter of typing and rendering, because everything else, you select the logo you want, boom, 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 and render, you're done.
Yeah.
And actually, that's where the expressions came in handy for me. Before I left, I did we did MLB package, which is, I think it's live right now. And I went in and I used my expression stuff. And the way I rigged it is super awesome, to where we have drop menu. I have literally a null. You go and select drop menu and select which team you want. And then you pick a few other things, and literally everything gets adjusted to that team. I mean, the way it was rigged, it was super awesome. I presented it to the higher ups. They loved it. And then a couple of weeks later, I tell them I quit.
Perfect. Well, I just want to call out, just for people listening who aren't familiar. We've been talking a little bit about something called Viz or Viz RT. And I have no experience using it. So Sergei, you can probably talk more about it, but it's basically a real-time graphics system that overlays graphics on top of live footage. But you can update things in real time, and it plays things in real time. Is that accurate, or is there more to it?
The way it works, it's actually, when you look at it at first, it's very impressive, but then you realize what's going on. So you would design something in Cinema 4D, right? And then you would give it to the Viz people. I'm talking about, you would design the animation, the render, everything. And you hand it to them. And what they do, they basically kind of dumb it down, take a lot of vertices out, bake everything. So it's like a gaming engine. You literally bake everything down and literally try to get rid of as much detail as you can get away with. And so that's why it's real time, because they get rid of a lot of that. They fake things. And I mean, it's impressive how they do it, but yeah, it's just a gaming engine, essentially.
Gotcha. Okay. And you never had any interest in kind of migrating over there?
I was close with expressions and stuff. I was fascinated because a lot of those guys use JavaScript to the way they rig stuff for producers to use. They have interface, they would type stuff and it would update things. I was very fascinated with that. I would always bug them. I'm like, hey, so I would ask them questions a lot. But no, I never, I've seen a few guys that kind of migrate that way, but I kind of just want to stay with what I was doing.
That's crazy. I would love to have a Viz RT artist on the podcast, because I know almost nothing about it. And it's kind of fascinating. So Sergei, when I was doing my research, I found a reel of yours on Vimeo that I think it must have been right before you got to Fox Sports, because there was nothing from Fox Sports on it. And then I saw some of the work you did at Fox Sports, and the jump in quality is astounding. So I'm curious, what was it about that job that kind of got your work? I mean, it's not the next level. It was you jumped 3 levels. It got really polished, really just high level stuff. So how did that happen?
Well, you have to keep in mind where I came from, and where a lot of people listening come from. We come from working on gigs that are 2 days, 3-day deadline, right? You have to use what you have to get it out fast, because clients want it fast, they want it cheap, so that's day-to-day stuff that we're used to. When time comes to make a reel, you're like, crap, I got nothing, because what I made was bits of seconds that I did here that I was kind of proud of. And so that was because of time. A lot of times I used to judge people oh, you're not as good. But then I started realizing that people that do that stuff, I mean, they're amazing. But because they don't have the time and luxury like we did at Fox, I mean, we spent 6 months working on a graphics package. I mean, surely you can have something done that's you're proud of in 6 months. Right. But when you work on projects that are 2-3 day kind of turnaround, then yeah, your quality suffers. And so yeah, you don't see yourself as that. But I guarantee you, if you put anybody in that place and give them 6 months and put a bunch of creative people. I mean, I worked with some of the most creative people, like Chris Watson. The robot guy, the NFL guy? Yeah. Chris Watson, the guy I sat next to for a couple of years. I mean, he modeled the guy, and I learned so much from him. And then there's so many other influences. It's unbelievable, though. So yeah, when you're around those people, you grow. I don't know if you play soccer or any other sports, when you play with people that are better than you, you automatically jump to that level. I don't know how that happens. It does. You all of a sudden have that confidence, and you're doing the same stuff. And I think that's what happened to me when I got to Fox Sports. and I was around those people, expectations were different. And I realized that, and something happens within you, that competitive spirit kicks in, and you like rise up to that occasion. So I think that's what happened to me, man.
I agree 100% with that. I can remember when I was freelance for the first time and I finally got my foot in the door at this really cool studio in New England. And I got in there and they had all of these, you know, they had flame artists, they had designers, they had really good After Effects artists. And I was like the crappiest person in that room. And the first time they gave me something to animate, I was terrified, but somehow I pulled it out of myself. And then it was like, oh, I guess I can do that. Okay. It's almost like you need permission to do more than you've been doing, you know?
No. And you know, on the flip side of that, anybody listening, if you want to up your game, I highly advise that you sign up for a job that you're not qualified for and see if you can get it. If it doesn't scare you, if it doesn't like make you feel like you're going to fail, then you're not going to grow. I mean, you can be the biggest fish in the pond, but put yourself around people that are better than you and watch what happens. I mean, obviously you're going to have anxiety going through the roof. I mean, there's going to be nights to where you're going to be questioning your motives and stuff. But at the end, though, it's going to make you a much better artist. I promise you that.
Yeah, you kind of have to check your ego and be okay failing. And I'm wondering if, you know, because there's to be honest, I mean, I think a lot of people have trouble doing that. They have trouble putting themselves out there and even just taking a chance, you know, but by applying to a job that they don't feel qualified for. And I'm curious, like, you know, have you and your brother, because I talked with Vladimir and you guys seem very much alike. Like, have you guys always been confident and able to do, you know, make difficult decisions like that? Or do you think some of that came from the experiences you had, you know, having to leave Ukraine and move here and all the challenges there?
I don't like, to be honest with you, I struggle with confidence, and so does my brother. But it's not necessarily that we're good at being confident. It's more like we just know that it's never going to go away. And it's easier to just kind of live with it and realize that, like, what it's going to do. Like, for example, if bodybuilders, you know, they love the pain, like, but who loves the pain? But I mean, they want that pain. If they work out and they don't feel the pain, they get like emotionally depressed or whatever. So in a lot of ways, like pain and like anxiety and like all that, I don't know, like lack of confidence, it's painful in a lot of ways, but you have to have that. That's what's it makes you better. So I understand, like, early on, I got it, that I got to go towards it, because even though I hate it, even though it stretches me, and I complain to my wife all the time and she loves me for it. Like, but at the end of the day, it's definitely, like, I don't know, something about comfort, man. It just kills you. And I've seen people do that over and over, you know, a guy like the best at the shop, and he just kind of figured it out and he just stays there. And you can see he's slowly just dying with his skills, and he's not pushing himself. But then I've seen people that are older and they're like going after all these scary stuff, and man, they're like better than the young guys coming out, you know? So there's something about running towards danger, running towards things that you know are going to make you better. So I think it's just naturally we understand that. It scares the living daylights out of me. Like, even the jump from quitting the job when I quit the job, Joey, I had 2 months of savings, no products. I mean, we were making $180 from YouTube a month, and that's still split with me and Vlad, and then before taxes. And that was it. Like, and somehow I'm 6 months in, we haven't really sold too much. And things lined up. You just figure things out. Pressure kicks in. You just figure things out. But unless you make that jump, I remember when I was sitting there, the guy, my boss, was saying, like, man, that's a pretty ballsy move. And I remember at the time I realized, crap, it is a ballsy move. Like, I didn't realize it was. Like, you know, and it's just something about that. When you jump, when you go towards danger, you just know the outcome is so much better.
So you said one of my favorite phrases, which is embrace the pain. Actually, I think it's in the beginning of, we have a course called Animation Bootcamp. And right in the beginning, I actually give the students that advice. Like, this is going to make you uncomfortable and you're not going to be good at it for a while. You got to embrace that. You got to like hug that, because that's what I love, the bodybuilding metaphor. That's like, it's perfect, man. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So you're at what you described as one of the best jobs you've ever had. And it sounds amazing, and you're learning a ton and you're getting better, and your work is showing up on national broadcasts, you know, probably several times a week. Why did you decide to leave that to go full time with Ukramedia?
I mean, obviously I had many variables and it's not just a one kind of answer. I mean, it's a combination of, you know this, Joey, you're a father, you want to be close to your kids. I mean, I blink and my kid is 5 and I'm like,
Yep.
what? I want to be with my kids. I've done this game long enough to where I don't need it in a lot of ways. Like I get it, you know, there are guys that are younger, more passionate, more motivated, that want, you know, still kind of oblivious to the whole industry and in general. So you get all this pressure and you're like, man, I want to focus. I want to be strategic how I do things from now on. Like, I don't want to be doing this chase all the time. I want to be more strategic. I want to be more influential in some other ways. I want to basically, I turned on the thinking cap and I started doing strategies. So, all right, like I love where I'm at. It's great, but I'm thinking 5 years from now, do I want to be doing this? You know, so it was a lot of strategies, a lot of that. And plus, I love my family. I want to be close to them, man. I just saw that slip, you know, like, hey, I'm spending too much time at work and I'm spending like an hour and a half with my kids. I got to do something about it because, I mean, it can be, what, a couple more years and they're in college and you're done.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that. And plus, I've always had a dream. My bro and I, when we first got to the States, this whole Ukramedia thing, how it came about, we were 12. We were kind of like clueless about life and just didn't know where boundaries were. And we were like, hey, man, that'd be so cool if one day we open up a company. And we were like, yeah, that would be cool. And then we were like, well, let's take it a bit further. Like, let's think about the name. What kind of name what would we label that company? And, you know, with our limited English at the time, we were like, hey, we're from Ukraine. We like media, like bunch of media. So let's call it Ukramedia. That was Vlad's idea. And then we're like, cool. Hey, I'm going to come up with the logo. And so I came up with the logo and we just played that for years. We're like, we'd make like name tags and like the passes when we would do like shoots at Boy Scout camps to create like a backstage kind of passes type deal. And just, we play, it was just I wouldn't say joke, but we just kind of took it a step further. We're like, never thought anything of it until like one day I decided to do a YouTube channel because I was frustrated at the job. You know, my first job, I got tired of watching tutorials that were what I would call like entertainment. Like it was fun to watch when I had a lot of time, but now I don't have that much time. I want to get something out of it. And I realized that not many people were like actually showing stuff that I can take in and apply it on daily basis. And, and I remember my coach, soccer coach, used to say like, hey, if you want to be a better like soccer player, you would just, you know, teach somebody something. So that summer I went and got a coaching license and started teaching. And next thing you know, I was an all-state soccer player. So I'm like, all right, hey, I'm seeing the area that people are not in. No one's kind of doing quick tips kind of stuff. And I also want to learn. So I want to teach people. So I kind of combined the two and then boom, next thing you know, I was like thinking, hey, we got to come up with a name. And so that's going back to Ukramedia. I'm like, I can't think of a name. It seems like all the good ones are gone. So I'm like, let's do the whole Ukramedia. And we just kind of accidentally just kept on arriving at Ukramedia until one day we realized, hey, I think people are finally taking us seriously. Like they think it's legit. And then that's how we arrived here, man.
That's awesome. I can really, I can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that. So you run Ukramedia, which is, and let's just give everyone some more details. So you have a YouTube channel with lots of really great tutorials on it. What else falls under that umbrella? So we're big on people, man. We're huge on community. We're huge on just obviously because we had so many people pour into our lives. So our main focus is obviously content, something that you can apply quickly to your practical workflow. But we also want to have a community of people because it sucks being alone. Like I know it's like to be alone, not speaking the language, not having people mentoring you in the ways that you want to. So we're really big on making it about people. So we really want to grow the community. My twin brother opened up the like a podcast. We want to bring in people like you, Joey, and you know, we want to make it like a family, like a big family, to where I remember I would go to some like blogs or forums, and I would ask a question, and next thing you know, like people made me feel like I'm so dumb, and I'm like, all right, but we like have a community, like a Facebook community that we create. It's like 2,000 some people, and the whole culture is like, there's not a dumb question. We love you guys, man. How can we help? How can we what can we do? And like, I see the growth in that. And honestly, man,
that is something I'm very excited about. I mean, I'm making friends, and dude, I just can't wait to one day to get some kind of conference going and just meet everybody. Like, I've met so many awesome people like Tim Thiessen, and just all kinds of like, you'd be surprised how many people that just carry so much knowledge and so many ideas that we're not tapping into because we just don't go in and actually get to know them. So we're big on community and teaching people the content. So that's something we're going to get behind. And obviously we have to have funding. So we're trying to come up with courses, and we also want to bring in more people in and kind of grow, the Ukramedia brand, and not me or my brother.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to go through that process, and I think you're doing it right though, because the truth is the community is actually the most important part. Like, we have a Facebook group, and right now it's only for alumni of our courses, but it's over 2,000 people, and it's funny because originally when I made that as part of like our first class ended, and I was like, what do we do with these people? Let's make a Facebook group for alumni. And it's just grown so big. And we have alumni tell us that that's the most valuable part of what they're getting when they get a course, is access to that. Because it's the same thing. I mean, I think, I feel like the vibe of an online community, it's kind of a reflection of whoever started it. And you and Vladimir are obviously very nice, warm people. And so you're not going to make someone feel stupid for saying, hey, wait, what's a null object? I don't know what that is. Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with us. I mean, we try our best to have like just a fun, friendly, meme filled Facebook group as much as we can.
And honestly, it kind of runs itself. Right? You don't have to do much. It just runs itself. That's what I love about it. It's like effortless thing that everyone should do. I mean, people get attached to things. They're talking to each other. They're making friends. They're getting together on some gigs. And I mean, they're making friends that will last for like a lifetime. And I think that's great. I'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah. And it is very cool too. If you ever get an opportunity to meet people in real life. Like we just co-sponsored this party at the last NAB conference with Christo and Maxon and a bunch of other cool companies. And there were a lot of School of Motion alumni there. And it was so amazing to meet them and actually, like, oh, I kind of remember your name from the Facebook group. Oh my gosh, that's you. And it is pretty cool. That's one of the cool things about the motion design community is that, everybody's just kind of nice for the most part. I mean, like not everybody, but almost everybody.
That's something, that's awesome. That's something I like about you, Joey. Like I could tell that you have that uniting kind of spirit to where like, you're not afraid of bringing in people that are competitors, and just kind of like, hey man, we're all in it together. It's big enough for everybody. And I heard about that conference and I saw that you guys sponsored it, right? I'm pretty sure you guys did. Yeah. And I think that's great, man. I think you guys should do more of that.
Well, maybe next year you'll co-sponsor it with us, Sergei. Hey, how about that?
I would love to. I would love to.
Yeah. So I want to hear how. So your brother Vladimir, who he's been silent this whole time, but I know he's sitting right next to you. He's not a motion designer, right?
No, he's not. But the thing is, we started out at the same. Like he's not like ignorant to it. He knows a lot about it, but we started out at the same kind of level. But he would just try different routes. He went to video and web, and he's more of a web guy at this point. But he still knows video. He's very good storyteller, but he's just an awesome communicator. And I'm so glad that he's doing the podcast. He has that ability to connect with anybody, and I love that about him. You know how they say you have to have like three kinds of people to run a business. You have to have a hustler, you have to have a nerd, and a hippie. So Vlad's a hustler. Vlad is a hustler. Dude is he hustles like nobody. Like he keeps me on my toes. I'm more of a like nerd and like, let's do the numbers. And then we're looking for a hippie. So we're still on the hunt for that one, but we're almost there.
Man, I love that. I've never heard that before. Okay, cool. I'm trying to think like who at School of Motion fits each of those. It's amazing.
You have to have it. But yeah, I think it's a good model for us. Like, especially growing up, Vlad and I were always pushed each other in soccer. And so it's a natural fit for us. It wasn't like, even though he's not a motion graphic designer and stuff, he's been in it so much he gets it. And I kind of like that he's doing the podcast. It's not very technical, but he still understands, what's being said and things like that. But he's been with Ukramedia like all along, right? I mean, heck, he came up with the name. A lot of people don't know this, but he was the one that came up with the name. So he does know a lot. It's just, I guess when we get into technical stuff, that's where he might check out.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was curious about how you guys sort of split up the responsibilities, but it sounds like, you handle the geeky After Effects stuff. You're the nerd.
Yeah, I come up
and
with
then Vladimir's the hustler. Yeah, he does the podcast, and he probably does the website if he's a web guy.
He's a good salesperson. Like, growing up, he would always he would oversell stuff a lot, and to my level, he would always he'd be like, yeah, this, and I'm like, Vlad, I don't know if I can do this, man. Like, so he's just a great, he'll make you feel great about what you're buying, and just in general, he's really good at painting a good picture. And I think it's not only a sales, but he's just a good storyteller. And the way the video he did for our YouTube channel, I don't know if you saw it, but he's the one that made it. He cut it, he filmed it, he edited, he wrote the script for it and everything. So he knows a lot about video, but just maybe not the 3D side of things,
Gotcha. So are the two of you able, at this point, so you said it's been 6 months since you both quit your jobs and you're all in on Ukramedia, which I've done that too. And I know that takes, I don't know what the Russian word for balls is, but if I did, I would say it. So at this point, are you is that how you're paying your bills, or are you guys still freelancing, doing other things?
No. And that's a thing. When we jumped, we said, hey, we're not doing freelance. There's no plan B, because if you have a plan B, it quickly becomes plan A. We learned that early on. So there's no, we don't have a plan B. And so we just jumped, and we kind of all right, we have to keep working. What do we need to, somehow, I don't understand how it happened, but somehow things will line up. Somehow things were paid. I don't know. I can't explain it. And so, yeah, but at this point, we developed some, we have this script the course coming up on scripting, or expressions, I'm sorry. And so, yeah, we're banking a lot on that. But even then, we're so frugal in a lot of ways to where, we have structure down. We're debt free. I've never had a credit card in my life. So we're smart in a lot of ways. It's a lean thing, but it's growing, and it's, we have plans, we have a strategy, and we're backing it up. So we're so confident in it that we don't have plan B per se. So
I love it, dude. I love it. Okay, well, I want to hear about the products that you're creating. That's one of the trickiest things, honestly. With any tutorial site, eventually, if you want it to sustain, you have to figure out how to actually keep the lights on, right? And so I saw on your site that you already have some products on there now at the time of this recording, and they look like sort of After Effects templates and things like that. How did you come up with the ideas for that stuff? Were those just experiments, or was there some process behind those? So
when I quit Fox, I only knew 50% of what I know now with the expressions. I didn't even know how to script. I didn't know how to create a script. So when I jumped, and you could tell how much confidence I had to jump, I'm like, yeah, I can do all of this. Let's jump. And then I get to it, I'm like, oh crap, we gotta do stuff. So I quickly learned scripting. I knew enough about JavaScript and all that stuff. And so I was like, hey, what am I going to create? And I decided to create something that I thought I needed. I don't know if you, I use shape layers a lot. It's just my thing. I remember as soon as the shape layers had the feature to where you can draw a mask on it, which was 3 years ago, I was hooked. I said, goodbye solids. I hated you all alone anyway. I'm all cause when you do set mats, the way it's raster, so it just works amazing. If you're doing solids, you got to consider shapes. It's just my thing. So, but I had a problem with shape layers because, every time you click on a shape layer, it's always it extends from it kind of scales from the center. And I was I hated that. I always have to rig it up, split the dimensions, and, go from one side. So I decided, I'm hey, I'm going to create scripts that I think are useful for myself. And if I find them useful, then I'm sure somebody else will too. So I created this script called Smart Rect. And literally I spent hours directing. So basically kind of makes a solid more, gives you more options. You can extend from extrude from one side or from the other side. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's nothing too crazy, but it certainly gives you a lot of options that I love. So I just created that stuff and posted it. And in a weird way, it helped me with the expression scores. So it was a step, right? So I created this thing and then that gave me more knowledge about the expressions. And then I started understanding expressions. I'm whoa, I get it. You obviously understand the programming side of things, but I didn't know all of that stuff. But then I'm starting to realize the basics. It's something a lot of people miss. Like a lot of people miss like expressions. They only look at methods. What can I get out of this method, that method, but they don't understand the basics of things. And so I decided to, all right, I'm going to go through, create these courses or create these plugins so I can maybe make some money and kind of make it through 1 month until I'm building up this course. So it was like a journey, like to kind of get me to another step. And then I finally got the basics. I'm like, all right, it's an object-oriented programming language. Get it. So then objects have properties, properties have values, and then we can apply methods to them. And really, I would stop there. I'm like, oh, what other method do I need to learn? But then I learned about reflection objects. I'm like, oh, you can see what kind of methods you can apply to a string, to a Boolean, so it was like a huge journey for me. And those products just came about because of the journey that I was on. And now we're finally at this expressions course to where really, I mean, I'm not like going into each method, like what's a wiggle, what's this, even though I'm talking about it, but I'm talking about the foundation of it. Like, hey, here's objects, properties, methods. You need to know those. Here's how you find out the properties of an object. You need to know those. Here's how, here's what kind of values those objects are, properties are, Boolean, a string, a number, all that stuff, array. So then you break it down and literally you don't have to teach, Joe, you don't have to teach every method. You just, if people get the foundation of it, they get the expressions. After that, it's just meaning like, all right, so what kind of method do I need to use to get this done? And vice versa. So I'm thankful. Exactly. I'm thankful for the scripts. I would like to say that I created it to make money, but honestly, it was just a result of my learning. It was my learning process. And that was like the first script. Control It was not Control It, Smart Rect. I can't remember which one was first. It was my first script that I ever wrote. So it's not like I had this knowledge. No, but I think what I have that maybe others don't is I come from a background of motion graphic designer and I see things from non-nerdy way. Like I get their lingo now, but I can explain it using my lingo, because I don't know about you, but the programmers have this like a secret society language that only, certain handshakes will get you through. But like, I just didn't understand it. Like, it's not that it's hard. It's just the language that they use. You're like, oh my God, why don't you just say that it's a text, that a string? Why do you have to call it a string? Like that's something that I couldn't. And even like people would get so like creative with their variables, how they label them. I thought that was a specific variable that you have to look up somewhere. And I would like try to copy it. And I'm like, wait a minute, variables are made up. And so a lot of that stuff was figured out through that journey. I know I'm saying a lot, but really those products are just a result of my journey. And I'm so glad that I went on that journey.
Well, I like that. You started by scratching your own itch. Like you had this annoyance about the way shape layers, scale or something. And so you're like, okay, well, it'd be really nice if this tool existed that worked this way, and it didn't. So you figured it out and you made it. And then from there, it leads you into, it sounds like pretty deep into the weeds and expressions. You said earlier that your soccer coach gave you some advice. If you want to be a good soccer player, go teach someone to play soccer. And I'm wondering if is that how you're approaching this expressions class? Like, hopefully it can be a revenue generator. It can make the business, work. But on top of that, to teach an expressions class, you're going to get really good at expressions.
Yeah. Obviously it was a combination of a lot of things. Like I wanted to get better at expressions because I wanted to niche down, because After Effects, even within After Effects, like a lot of people doing cool stuff, but I just felt like that one area where not everyone is excited about going. Like, I feel like everyone's kind of faking it. Like, oh yeah, I know expressions. But if you start talking to them, like, I think it's cute when people do the whole, like, if else statement, and they only put like if, and then condition. And at the end of condition, they put like a code block for when they put like one value. I'm like, why'd you do code block for one value? Like, code block is if you want to combine a bunch of them together, so like, they don't even understand like the use of code block, so in a way, like I wanted to I want to learn the basics. Like, I want to know like why we do this if and condition and then code block. What are those curly brackets? Like, what do they do? And so that was like, and that's the area I feel like a lot of people don't want to go into. Like expressions, everyone's like, yeah, I can do cool tutorials, but no, expressions, I just don't know how. So it scared me too. Like, I was the same way. I'm like, I don't know if I'm qualified to do this. And somehow when you start that journey, you find friends like Tim Thiessen, who's my mentor. He's like, not many people know about Tim Thiessen, but that guy is like the guy for me, man. I talk to him a lot. I'm trying to like convince him to come on. He's actually going to do a tutorial for us. So I'm excited about that. So it's definitely area that I didn't necessarily wanted to go because I knew it was going to be uncomfortable, but I'm so glad I did because I'm learning so much. And obviously I want to teach others so I can get better as well.
Well, it sounds like an awesome class, man. I'm definitely going to have to check it out because I'm a big expressions geek. So the more knowledge I can cram into my head, the happier I am.
But it's actually not. It's not like we won't have any quizzes. It's just me talking about the basics. Really, I haven't even gotten to a lot of methods yet. I'm still at objects, properties, and methods, and like I'm not expanding too much. I'm just really drilling in on the basics. That's what I'm doing. Like the tools that we have in After Effects, how to use them, why we're using them, that kind of stuff.
So I want to talk about, I guess the future for you and your brother. And, actually I want to ask you a random thing first. I went on your YouTube page and I was watching a few of your videos and I found one, I think it was like how to animate a snowflake or something like that. And it was this cool sort of vector snowflake, but it said in the description, you'd actually translated it from a Russian tutorial into English.
Yeah, it was my friends from videosmile.net. They're Russian motion graphic people that somehow I just got in connection with at the time. And they were just gonna, I think they wanted me to translate their course. And I'm like, cool, yeah, sounds good. Let's give it a try. And then I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. It's just too much work. But that result was that tutorial was the result of me testing it. Like, let's see if I can even do it. Like, let me take your tutorial and let me like translate it. And then I translated it in that way, and I kind of showed it to them, and I uploaded it to my own channel. They were cool with it. They got something out of it, and we got something out of it. But it kind of stopped there, though. Then we wanted to do another tutorial. I don't know if you saw my Blender tutorial. I have like one Blender tutorial, and I was gonna translate another tutorial by them. This like a paddle thing that was their stuff too. And then I'm like, you know what? Like, it's just too much work translating it. Like, I'm just going to create it myself. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to create it in Blender. And I did in Blender. So it was kind of, we were going to go somewhere with that, but it just never went anywhere.
It's interesting. We've had, we have students from all over the world. Like I forget what it is now. It's like 97 countries or something crazy. And so for a ton of them, English is not their first language. And we've had requests like, hey, could someone translate this into Brazilian or into Portuguese or into, Chinese or something like that. It seems like not only is that a ton of work for somebody and probably a big expense, but also how well does it work? Like, so that's what I'm kind of curious about, someone else teaching something with their personality and their voice and the way they talk, and then you trying to translate it. How successful was that, do you think?
I struggle with it, to be honest with you, Joey, because the things the guy was, the stuff he was doing that I wouldn't normally do that way. I'm like, no, you should use this shortcut. It was like, so it was like, there's stuff that I cut out. I'm like, no, you don't need that. Like, so it was frustrating. And that's why, honestly, I didn't enjoy it as much, because I'm like, wait, I'm putting my name on this. I wouldn't approach it this way. No disrespect, like that kind of stuff. But translating a whole course, I mean, it's tough to make it look like you did it. I think that's probably the struggle, is not to lose that, right? Like not to have it feel like it's a translated course. Like, I don't know if you watched that tutorial, I tried my best to make it look like I was creating it, but I mean, that wasn't my cursor, that wasn't my computer, So, right. So there is that struggle, and yeah, it's tough. I mean, it was discouraging enough for me to where I kind of backed out. I mean, it was like hours and hours of stuff, and I'm like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really cool idea because English is the only language that I'm fluent in. And so, fortunately, I would, most of the After Effects tutorials out there are in English, but I mean, the rest of the world, sort of gets the short end of the stick a little bit. Especially like, I'm assuming, China, not everyone speaks English there. And so like, is there this whole other world of Chinese tutorials, or are they struggling to hear and figure out the English tutorials? And I thought what you did was really brilliant for that reason. And I'm kind of bummed to hear that it wasn't as successful as they'd hoped.
No, I think me and Vlad do, like, that's a topic that comes up sometimes, doing something in Russian, so we do want to explore other areas as well. But as far as like bringing in content and translating it for them. Yeah, I don't know if we're interested in that. Like, we want to create our own content. We have enough information. We have enough.
Yeah.
Like, there is not a need for that. I think at the time I was approaching it as like a freelance gig type deal. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I would love to explore other languages though. Is that something you guys considering?
I mean, we've looked into it, translation services are very expensive. Yeah. And there's always that question of, if we had someone translate, like say one of my tutorials into Portuguese, I have no way of knowing like how good of a job they did, other than like asking someone who speaks Portuguese, who may not have the same expertise or the same experience with After Effects. So it's a tricky thing actually, to translate very, very technical tutorials. I mean, I'm assuming even just, if someone tried to translate an expressions tutorial from English into Russian, I'm sure it would be a nightmare because of all the strange words. Like, this is a curly Q. Okay, what's curly Q in Russian? Like that kind of stuff.
It's a nightmare in English. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, it's hard enough.
What's a literal? I don't know. Like, yeah, there's that. But I think you guys should explore it. I think it'd be a fun journey. You never know.
Yeah, well, we are looking into it. So if anyone's listening, I'm waiting for that. We actually are like talking about it internally. So I want to find out before I leave you, Sergei. I want to know where all this is going in your mind. Like, what do you hope Ukramedia turns into, and like what sort of products and services do you hope that you can offer? Let's say in 5 years, what does this look like?
Well, obviously, my hope is to grow everything that we have, just grow the community. That's a huge one for us. And obviously grow the content. That's another one. But on top of that, it's a business, and that's something. Before it was a hobby, right? It was just something you did. And every now and then some money will come in to kind of justify your time for your wife. Like, hey, I am doing something good here, but obviously at this point it's a business, and we'd love to venture out, and we're learning a lot about that. And I would love to bring in more people. I don't want it to be just us doing the work. We would love to bring in other creators, just what you guys are doing. I don't know, expression course is one of them. It's actually obviously the beginning for us. We want to kind of niche down to the expressions for right now. And that's what we want to do more of. We want to bring in more people like that. But essentially it's just growing the areas that I feel like we're doing well at. I mean, more content, bringing more people, and expanding the community. And obviously because we're big on people, we love people, we consider them as our family. We call it Ukramedia family. So that's something we're very passionate about. So it's not going to change. Maybe we're just hoping it's going to be expanded more. And obviously the funds would be more there for us to grow. I've heard your stories about, there's a Matt Trunks that kind of went down. I love that guy, but because the pricing and everything, we're learning a lot about that. That's something that I'm not very good at as far as pricing, but again, learning, listening to the right people, and we're here to grow. That's for sure.
Check out Ukramedia.com to see what Sergei and Vladimir have been up to, and to learn a whole lot of cool stuff about expressions, After Effects tips, and a lot more. Everything we talked about will be linked in the show notes at schoolofmotion.com. And if you haven't already, you should sign up for Motion Mondays. Well, what's that, you ask? Motion Mondays is our free weekly short email that we send out on Monday mornings to keep you up to date on what's happening in the motion design industry. It's really short. It's so short you can read it while you're taking a number 1. Don't even need number 2. That's it from me. I'll see you next time.